My name is Brent Breaux, and I'm an Agile coach at Clearly Agile in Tampa, Florida. And today I'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about the building blocks of planning and forecasting in Agile, and specifically in this video around the concept of velocity. So what is this velocity stuff, if you may be asking yourself? Well, I generally like to settle on a definition that centers around a couple key points, in that one, a definition of it's a measurement of completed work by a team averaged across multiple iterations or sprints. It's a number also derived on past performance, and it's not a guess. And this is a core tenet of Agile planning and forecasting in general. Is that's good footing to be on when you can look at past performance as a measure of what might happen in the future. So good fundamental concept there. And then another generally accepted kind of Scrum practice is that you'll take a rolling average going forward, so that the teams are not always penalized by their poor performance in the past, that eventually phases out in favor for a velocity that is hopefully trending upward as the team improves. So a rolling average, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 sprints, up to you. Generally 3 is where I tend to land. In order to normalize the fluctuations that we will tend to see in any team. It's just going to happen from time to time, no matter what the circumstance. So how can velocity be used in planning? Well, I think the obvious one at the team level is that it can be used as a guideline, and I do mean guideline, for basically considering at the team level, how much work do we think we should be able to take in this given sprint, this given iteration, based on past performance. Usually we get about 20 points of items done. We might want to use that as a soft guide. If we commit to 40 or 50 points, we should be asking ourselves if we really feel good, because that's not been our history. Do we really feel like we can do that much? Or if we need to go a little bit under, that's okay too, just as long as you use that as your number to influence what you might be able to take into and commit in a given sprint. And then you can take that and steamroll it forward into, or snowball it forward into, a mid-range plan of 2 to 3 sprints, and even a long-term quarterly or program increment bucket, and even further out than that in your roadmap. But no matter how big your time box is, you can use velocity to figure out how much stuff you can chunk in there as a guideline, loosely. Again, it's a planning number, and you shouldn't expect high accuracy in terms of things that are generally centered around estimations. The good news is that it's past performance, so that gives us a vote of confidence to go forward and say, how can we use velocity in forecasting? Well, it becomes simple math to take a backlog of known work and add up all the story points that you have and divide that by the team's velocity. So if you have 100 points in your backlog and the team can do 20 a sprint, you've got about 5 sprints of work to get through that. Again, it's an average, so it might be a little off, because maybe one sprint the team does 10 story points because something went really wrong that was out of our control. Or maybe it comes in a little faster because you were able to do more than 20 points and your velocity increased. But you can definitely take some basic math and say, hey, how much velocity am I dealing with it for one or more teams, considering they're working on the same thing roughly, and how can I divide that into the sum total of work, and then figure out a projection, a forecast. So that's a high level, and we can get into some advanced topics on what do you, for example, like what do you do when not all your work has story points? The team hasn't refined it all. It's too far in the future. What do you do when you haven't even written some of the stories, and you want to try to create some sort of forecast? Well, we can dive into all that stuff in later, kind of fundamental building block videos that'll come in the future, and flesh that out and tie it in with things like release planning and burn up and burn down charts and all that good stuff. But for now, that's a little bit on forecasting. And I'll leave you with velocity, just like any Agile metric. Make sure you're not subscribing to some anti-patterns that exist around this concept, and that's taking Team A and comparing them to Team B. Much like an apple is different from an orange, Team A is going to be different from Team B, and you're not comparing like things. So to say, hey, why can't you be like Team B, assuming Team B's velocity is higher, and get yours higher? There's some really fundamental things you want to back up and try to address why you're trying why you're asking that, and what are you trying to get after, that I think can be addressed without falling in the trap of comparing apples to oranges. So again, be careful in how you treat velocity. And furthermore, how you treat any metric. As Eli Goldratt is quoted, he says, "Tell me how you'll measure me, and I'll tell you how I behave." And that goes back to some thinking out of the research industry, where people have done research experiments and they begin to note, hey, once people realize they're being observed, they will change their behavior. So much like any metric, these can be gamed, these can be inflated in order to get a higher velocity, for example, either maliciously or subtly. These kinds of things can happen. So be very careful about the anti-patterns and how much you weaponize any given metric, especially velocity, but it can be useful in a lot of ways as a fundamental building block of agile planning and forecasting. So with that, I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your day to talk about this concept. I hope you found it useful. If you did and you'd like to know more, reach out to us at Clearly Agile. We'd love to engage with you and help you figure out how you can bring some of these concepts into your daily work and improve how things are happening in your world. With that, I thank you for your time and wish you the best. Bye-bye.